He didn't know how he was going to be able to go, how he can go back to Graceland, and what it was going to be like. It would never be the same without the presence of his mother there. And, you know, he was reluctant in even going there.
He was mostly talking about being lonely and missing his mother, and that he wished he could be home with us, and that he was thinking back on the Christmas before when we were all together with his mother.
I feel very fortunate that I got to know him during that time. And I'm sure even before, you know, the death of his mother, he was an entirely different Elvis then, because from stories that were told to me, he was happy-go-lucky, he was you know, had a wonderful spirit of play, he was just on top of the world. So, you know, I met him right after that had happened, and I saw a very sad Elvis, an Elvis who was very insecure and very unsure of where he was going to, you know, where he was going to be when he got back. There's a Southern gentleman who takes care of the woman, and that's it. And Elvis was very much that Southern gentleman. I mean, he believed in that. A woman had her place beside her man, supporting him and doing things for him and agreeing with him. Would always prepare myself before he came home and greet him at the door, all dressed and coiffed.
With a black beehive.
Yeah, and you looked at me and you said, "What in the world happened to you?" This is me now. This is me now. I'm your daughter, but I'm my own person.
He didn't want Priscilla walking around the house in a robe and pajamas. Anytime you've got 3, 4 guys living in your house, it's not private.
Because we did have a good relationship. It was just that it had to be his relationship and pretty much adapted to his lifestyle. There was definitely 2 Elvises.
And that was what was great about him. He had every temptation that we all have. He just, in general, chose to be a nice guy.
Think Elvis would have liked it?
I knew you were going to ask me that question.
You did? I didn't know I was going to ask you.
Well, you know, I think it's probably one of the first things. You know, Elvis loved entertainment.
He loved Vegas.
He loved Vegas. He loved all forms of entertainment. I mean, I remember going to a show that he loved that was just an adage number. It was the famous Tagi and Brasha, I think, in the very early 60s. It was just the 2 of them dancing. He loved to watch dance numbers. So I can't imagine him, you know, not feeling honored that a whole show has been, you know, produced for him, just for him. And he came to the house and he was charming, he was wonderful, and my family had a lot of faith in him.
What was Elvis Presley like then?
He was insecure. He was, you could talk to him as a person. You knew who he was, you knew his fears. He had, he was so vulnerable. He was gentle, he was fun. He was a person you could really deal with.
Were you mad about him?
I was, but our relationship it's very different. It was a very protective relationship from the very beginning. I don't know what it was about him, but he kind of took me under his arm and nourished me in many ways.
37 years ago.
37. It's hard to believe.
He would be 79.
I can't even fathom that number. I can't even fathom that.
Would he be working at 79?
I think he would. I think he would always sing. It was such a part of him.
Should we let her go? If we don't let her go, what's going to happen? She'll always accuse us of ruining her life.
We had to consider your feelings, too.
I said, "You're ruining my life," you know, and it made me think a little bit, and I said, "Please talk to Dad." He was calling a lot, and, you know, it had already been 2 years.
It was hard. It was hard to make a decision when you know that you really don't know what's going on.
There was these continuous calls, and I was very convincing to my parents and saying, "I'll take good care of her, please let her come."
You sometimes think that this is it. You'll never find another one, you know.
Remember at that time, too, girls and boys were getting married at, say, 17, 18, 19, and 20, and God forbid that a girl should go as old as 25 and not be married.
So my parents let me come. I don't think they made a mistake. Who knows? I maybe wouldn't have been married and had the child I have.
Presley was in the Army that you 2 first met. Could you tell me how that happened and where it was and what the circumstances were?
Gee, it was, gosh, a month after I arrived in Wiesbaden, Germany, I was sitting in a snack bar. It wasn't really a snack bar. It was just a place where a lot of the people would used to go and have hamburgers and Cokes or whatever. And a gentleman came up to me and asked if I'd like to meet Elvis. And I thought he was kidding and said, sure, yeah. All right, now what? And he says, no, I'm really serious. I go to his house a lot, and would you like to go? And I said, I still didn't believe him. And then it was another day that I was there, and he was also there. He said, I'm serious. I told him about you, and he'd like to meet you. It sounds very, offbeat, but that's exactly how it happened. And then I asked my parents. My parents were very leery. Didn't think, had really checked him out to see if it was okay. And I went, and from that moment on, we started seeing each other.
He was not a racist. He's never been a racist. Elvis had friends, black friends, friends from all over. He loved their music. He loved their style. He loved being around, black musicians. I mean, that's Domino. When he was in Vegas, he was in the lounge playing, and we would always go and hang out with him. Sammy Davis Jr., the same thing, would always come into the dressing room, and he loved being around blacks and being around anyone, actually. He was just not prejudiced in any way, and not racist in any way.
Service. Elvis and Priscilla became good friends and starting seeing each other frequently. Priscilla said that Elvis was the love of her life. In March 1960, Elvis departed from Germany to return to the U.S. She managed to stay in touch with Elvis by phone, but she had to wait 2 years to see him again.
Really didn't have any of my own friends, although I, got along with everybody. My only problem with Elvis was that he didn't really want me that close to any of the girls.
He kept a certain distance between the relationship between the guys and Priscilla. He didn't want her to be one of the guys.
I saw things, and I was around situations of which he told me that I had to be very quiet about, and that I was not allowed to, obviously, tell the wives. He put a lot of trust in me, and I could never betray him.
You can't use those words. Put an X rating right across your big mouth.
So that kind of put a bit of a line there between us. I think they felt and probably thought that maybe I was cold or not really reachable.
Well, we didn't know that she had to be kind of careful about being friends with the other girls because something might slip.
Thousands of people were mourning the death of Elvis Presley at his funeral. And Lisa Marie Presley here talks about how Elvis's body was at Graceland's for 3 days, and she just sat with his body and found that it was oddly comforting. And in this interview, she is very close to tears. Priscilla Presley's parents are in tears, almost unable to speak. And Patsy Presley says she just couldn't believe he was gone. And Vernon Presley speaks to the public and thanks them for all the letters of support since his son Elvis Presley had passed, and says that the letters had really helped him. Thanks, everyone.
Vernon walked in and said, son, we got a problem. I don't want to hear it, Daddy. Did not raise his head up. He still went on in. He said, I don't want to hear it right now. And Vernon kept on. And Elvis said, I don't want to hear it now. I don't want to talk about it now. And Vernon said something else. And Elvis looked at him and he says, look, goddammit, I said I don't want, he said, you know better than to come talk to me about business before I've had my breakfast and what have you. And Vernon mouthed off at him. He says, look, I'm the goddamn boss here. Elvis said that to his father. His father said, yeah, but you ain't man enough to make me do what And Elvis says, well, by God, I am. He says, I'm a lot more man than you are, to his father. And Vernon said, no, not even half. And Elvis got up, picked up a chair and the plate, both at the same time, wham, across the room, and went upstairs.